What does it mean to be a Swindon Town fan? We don't stick with our club through thick and thin because of the endless trophy presentations, a fog of perpetual glory, or a conveyor belt of multi-million pound signings queuing up to sign on around the county ground boardroom table. I like to think there's certain events that symbolise exactly what Swindon Town supporting experience is all about. None more so than the events which unfolded between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. one very cold Saturday, 28th of November 2020. With the world in lockdown, our football club gave us a moment none of us will forget. An immortal night for every single Swindon Town supporter to treasure. Passion, irony, despair, triumph, unlikely heroes, pantomime villains, beloved loanees, gut-wrenching drama, against the odds heroism, lagging I follow, and score notifications Mystic Meg would have been proud of. Ultimately, a sliver of utter red and white delight that, dare I say it, was so taboo, only a few of us can say they were actually legally part of it or the celebrations that followed. There was, of course, the seemingly inevitable plummeting low further down the line, but let's not let that get in the way of Fairy Tale Night up the A420. A night so delightfully Swindon Town that I named a show after both it and its main protagonists. Well, this isn't about winning a local derby and securing Tim Pot bragging rights. As one of the wisest football men once said, it's much more important than that. Or as another one also said, football. Bloody hell. Well, welcome to a night of merry Broadbent, of happy Tyler Smith Day, of happy birthday, very first birthday to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, a night of lifting the hood on that most transcendental of nights and what it means to us, our loved ones, and our footballing psyche, both collective and individual moving forward. Well, look, get in touch. Tell us your memories, your stories, your reflections of cherished memories with loved ones. With a country under the greyest of clouds, this was one hell of a silver lining. So come and tell us your stories, and the best ones will win a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge goodie bag full of money can't buy one-off treats. So joining me is a beautiful smorgasbord of Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge talent, and we'll start by saying hello to Crispy.
Hello. How are we doing, Hannes? How are we doing?
I'm reflective. I'm nostalgic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, Chris. It's been a year in the making, so hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes, we certainly will. And well, there's lots to talk about, isn't there?
Yes, there certainly is. And joining Crispy and I is on co-hosting duty tonight is Ellis. How are we, champ?
Good evening, one and all. I am looking forward to this show.
I should hope you are. Nothing better than a good bit of pox bashing. Yeah, very much. And thanks for joining us, Ellis. Appreciate hot off your latest training camp, mate. Appreciate you cutting it short. And last but by no means least, we have the inimitable Joseph Vincent. Joe, how are we?
Hello, Hannah's. Happy Broadbent.
Happy Merry Broadbent. Happy Tyler Smith Day.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Tyler Smith, he gets some small shouts out, but we both know it was a Tom Broadbent double that day.
Yeah. Well, listen, at the end of the day, he's got to know his place, right? We all know who was the loney in that part of the mix. So, listen. Yeah, so, well, listen, I mean, look, it would be remiss of me. It's a night that we all own, right? It would be remiss of me to start sort of like stamping my memories on the piece. But I thought no better way for us to start than by asking that question that we all kind of pretty much know the answer. Where were you, gentlemen, on the 28th of the 11th, 2020? I'm pretty sure I know where you were, but you guys set the scene for me.
Someone go first because I've got a bit of a sad one. I don't want to start on a sad note.
Okay, I'll go first. Mine's pretty boring. Obviously, at home, game on the TV. And that was about it. But mental scenes when we scored. But yeah, I was just at home. Pretty boring.
Yeah, there's a reason I've asked this question, Chris. Where were you?
I was unfortunately, well, I was at home, but I was actually working. But the beauties of iFollow allowed me to watch it while I was working, and for about 85 minutes, I was pretty miserable. But then for about 5 minutes, I was totally ecstatic.
Yeah. Joe, I know you said you wanted to leave yourself till the end, but whereabouts were you, pal? What was going on?
Yeah, so I was actually around my nan and granddad's house watching it. So my granddad's a big Swindon fan. My nan, unfortunately, was really ill. She had terminal cancer. So it was kind of, we had it on the TV, and it was the sort of last sort of memory I've got of my nan being herself. Watching the game, obviously, she's not really into football. She wasn't really into football massively, but she was all second half. She was like, "Oh, come on, Swindon, giving it big un." And when obviously Brawley scored, and we won the game, it made her really happy, and it was just nice to see. So that's been I've told Tom myself. That's a really nice memory of my nan that he's given me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, listen, I'm also going to repeat, and there's a reason why. I appreciate the thank you for sharing that, Joe. By the way, it's obviously a very intimate, personal memory, and hopefully we'll come on to a few tributes, because obviously there's been, we lost a lot of people, haven't we, in the last couple of years, and I don't think there is a Swindon Town fan that's not in some way, shape, or form been touched by that. But I think that's one of the reasons why tonight, the topic of tonight's conversation is so special. As I mentioned, it was a silver lining whilst the whole country was essentially blanketed by the most greyest, miserable of clouds. And the fact was, I'll repeat, much like what you guys have said, where was I? Well, I'll tell you what, I was perched on the edge of my sofa, staring at my laptop, trying to kind of recreate the passion that we enjoy on a Saturday afternoon at the county ground, or obviously on an away day as it was that day. In a way that kind of season, that most unique of seasons, demanded we all did. Paying our, essentially paying our I follow tenor and sitting there much like we had done on Tuesday nights prior, just trying to make something of it. But the whole experience, we're going to start there, guys, because the whole experience of trying to follow our football club via a laptop or a desktop PC is not one that I ever want to repeat on a regular. But yet, weirdly, I don't think any of us, well, for a lot of us, we probably saw more Swindon Town football that season than any of us could have possibly ever seen before. And that's the weird, perverse nature of this, isn't it? The most Swindon-y of instances where we got to watch Swindon Town home and away from the comfort of our own living room, and it was thoroughly miserable.
Absolute shit. To be honest, we saw a few good goals from Scotty Twine in the second half of the season, but my God, yeah. Any other season you take, wouldn't you? I'd take a sort of mid-table League Two season to watch every game home and away.
It's funny we can laugh at it now, Joe, but at the time, like, it's hard to recreate that awful feeling of despair.
Mate, this is before I literally. Well, actually, no, it wasn't before. I have a special Fire Stick, allegedly, that you can watch all the games on, and I still, obviously, out of the kindness of my heart, I thought, Town aren't getting anyone into the ground for the games. I'll pay a tenner each week to watch it on iFollow, and after about 3 or 4 months, you're begrudging Saturday coming around to spend £10 to watch Town get spanked by a Portsmouth or a Sunderland. It was fairly rough, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and go on, Chris. Sorry.
I was going to say, the first 2 home games that season actually gave you a bit of confidence.
We were top of the league after the first one.
Yeah, I was going to say, but after that, it was just all downhill. It really was.
Chris, look, we should touch on that as well, because obviously the start of the season, it was all very Swindon-y, wasn't it? Like you said, we got off to an absolute flyer. The goals were flying in. We looked a little bit sort of shaky at the back, but hey, we had a guy from Man United on loan in between the sticks, and he was going to turn out to be better than Stephen Bender. And we had this lad from Bristol City on the wing, Johnny Smith, who played the game like he had a pair of slippers. And then we had a lad called Jordan Stevens join from Leeds United. And we had Matt from Arsenal in the middle. It was all going to be okay.
Oh, it was that. I remember. I can't remember which way round it was. Was it Rochdale first, the 3-0, and then Burton? Or was it the other way round?
Yeah, it was Rochdale first, wasn't it? And then we had
Charlton in between, didn't we, in the Carabao Cup?
No, yes, I think Charlton was actually before the season started.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, because
to be honest,
of the COVID.
Hannah's named some players from that season there. I know, obviously, we don't want to we don't want to stick around on the topic for too long, but it's a good enough team to stay up in League One, isn't it? Really, in terms of the squad we had, you think of, I mean, Matt Smith, I think was, he's a sensational footballer, and it's a surprise that he's not actually doing bits elsewhere. I think he's just at Arsenal rotting away in the 23s in a minute.
Well, he was outstanding that season. I also remember with that as well that obviously we had those 2 home games, but then I think Blackpool away we weren't great, and then Kovar got beat twice at his near post, didn't he? But yeah. I remember the game away against Peterborough. First half, we played them off the park, but we had only got the 1 goal, and then second half we just fell apart.
Mate, we had glimpses in that whole season. He obviously had beating Hull at home, which was, let's face it, pretty much the definition of a smash and grab. But I mean, yeah, I honestly think you could have put me in the managerial hot seat in that season, and I'd have kept us up.
And the legend that is Paul Caddis scored in that whole game, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was, Hallam Hope, wasn't it, the winner? Yeah, I mean, look at that whole team. They had players like, was it Josh McGuinness up front and Keane Lewis Potter? Like, it's a bloody good team.
They went up that season, I believe, as well, didn't they?
Yeah. I'm getting PTSD. I don't ever take me back to the 2021 season, please.
Well, that was the strange thing, though. Like what we said, there was a lot of almost like kind of false dawns, weren't there? And the start of the season, it actually weren't too shabby. Like you said, we've talked about Rochdale. I mean, but I don't think any of us would have really expected us to have got anything from Blackpool away. We got Burton sort of like well and truly sort of locked away. I mean, even like we lost away to Peterborough, but Jack Payne off the mark, and we were hoping for huge things from Jack Payne. But then we had a couple of fairly swift kicks in the nuts in October with home defeats, so Wimbledon and Sunderland. And then it was followed up by an away defeat to Northampton Town. And like you said, Hull, you're kind of like, wow, okay, look, we're back on track now. Like, we're really starting to look the part. But it just seemed like every time there was it felt like we were getting going. Someone just came along and whipped the rug out from underneath us. And then obviously we beat Rovers. And Pittman, Port Pie Pele, notches, and we keep a clean sheet, and we're thinking, right, okay, is this finally going to be sort of, the opportunity that we're going to kick on from? Swiftly followed by another defeat before, obviously, events of the 28th of November. More of that to come. But I mean,
I'll tell you, it'd be interesting to any of the listeners, leave a comment and give us your best game from watching on iFollow. Other than the Oxford game, obviously, I think that's fairly obvious. But I'm interested to see what people's memories of that season are in terms of the most enjoyable game to watch. Because I'm just thinking now, like Bristol Rovers away at the end of the season was a game that we won, and I think it gave us a lot of hope, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was the thing.
But there were good moments that season. Just most of it was shit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously doing the double over Rovers is something that we're all going to remember. Like, I think the season will be. I think you've got to look at Rovers. You've got to look at obviously the result against the Pox, and like you said, some absolute rip snorters from Scotty Twine, who just sort of seem to be able to score from everywhere. As you try and. You're trying to sort of, you really are trying to polish your turd, aren't you? Like beyond that, I mean, Wigan on the final day was just bonkers, wasn't it? Like it was crackers. I think, we all enjoyed Portsmouth, but I mean, the Twine goal against Ipswich was something else, wasn't it?
I was going to say the Twine goal, I think I would say is the best Swindon goal that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was something else. But unfortunately, around that kind of time, we had a very different type of manager in the dugout, didn't we? And I think part of the misery of iFollow that season was essentially having to listen to the audio that gentleman was serving up as well. And
do you think he'd go if there were fans at the ground? Do you think he'd have been gone by, February, March? Because I think he would have been.
Well, all right. Listen, let's have a little settle on that. Probably a little sooner than I would have expected. I'll be very, very interested again to take listener comments on this. But I mean, from my perspective, Joe, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think about the time where we started sort of saying, well, maybe there could be a little bit of hope here, which was, I think, around sort of March time when we had, was it March when we had Gillingham? And he was umming and ahhing about whether he was going to go or not. And at that stage, we still had a good sort of like 10, 12 games left in the season. And we'd given ourselves a chance to get out of it. And I think just the mere suggestion that he would leave was giving everyone that kind of sort of little lift, like that excitement, right, something's going to happen here. And I think we all knew that we had a squad capable of keeping us in the league as well. Him choosing not to go, I think, was just pretty much a dagger in everyone's heart. And the nature of him choosing not to go as well, it was absolutely bloody god-awful, wasn't it? I mean, what's your take on it?
I mean, to be honest, mate, I think, under the dictatorship at the time, the problem is he was never going to get sacked because, let's face it, Lee Power probably couldn't find one to give. He just... can you imagine the dross that we'd probably get in if Sheridan was sacked? I can't even tell you who'd be appointed towards the end of the season where Lee Power ultimately had given up on the football club. The wheels were probably in motion for the club to be wound up. I can't imagine who we'd probably get in. It'd be like the non-league version of Gary Megson or something.
I think, to be totally honest, Joe, if he had gone, bearing in mind who did the warm up, for the Wimbledon game, the senior pros were the ones that are pretty much sort of stepped up. I think, Cads.
Well, you had Peaks as well, didn't you?
Yeah, you had Peaks. Obviously, just think of who was in the building. You had Peaks, you had Mildy, you had Cads. I think Cads said he and Johnny Grounds did the warm up before the Wimbledon game. So there was already kind of people that were in a position to sort of get the team going, if you will. Get them all fired up and and try and sort of polish a turd. But I think. I still believe that we were seeing enough from that team around the time he decided to stay. I'm pretty sure we could have stayed up. I mean, look, Fleetwood, the away win, Fleetwood was huge. Rovers away, there was another back-to-back wins, and you're thinking, right, hello, we got something going here. But then, ultimately he stays put. I remember the weird thing was after we beat Rovers. Do you remember there was even the suggestion that maybe Shez has pulled something out of the hat here? There was actually goodwill developing as well at that stage. And then it just went so horribly, horribly wrong. Oh, God.
I think the moment it went tits up for good was probably when there was the bust up on the substitutes bench. Where was that? Was that away at...
Was that Milton Keynes?
Accrington? I think it was Accrington.
Was it Accrington?
Yeah, and it was obviously... Taylor Coram wasn't the flavour of the month for most Town fans anyway. And then you had Tyrese Omatoy, who'd come in, played about 30 seconds of football as a striker. They had good pedigree. He'd done well in, reserve football and in the JPC or whatever. As soon as that happened, and Sheridan probably couldn't be bothered to battle his way out of looking shit in the media and not being the most popular gaffer in the league. He was just, I think that moment for me was when I was like, right, even the players are giving up and blaming each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting one, wasn't it? There were so many weird stories. I mean, it's interesting. We go on about Paul Caddis. We spoke off air, probably Cads and I, about a year ago, and I think he even said some of this online when he came on the show. We were talking about the fact that football is a terrible blame culture when things are going horribly wrong. That and so as a consequence, I think a lot of that kind of overlapped into what we were thinking as well. You mentioned there, like Tyrese Omatoy, we've got a lad there on loan from a Premier League team who he's just not getting any minutes. People are asking him, like, what the hell's going on? You've got Tyler Smith on loan, and Tyler Smith, it just seemed like every time he played, he would score, but couldn't find his way into the starting lineup, and people were asking questions. What the bloody hell? We got a guy that that finished the season, with 10 goals. He could have probably finished the season with 20, 25 goals, even in a god awful miserable team. But sure as eggs is eggs, we would have had a few more points on the board with him in the team. You had the Taylor Curry situation, and people sort of speculating as to who is this guy? Why is he in the squad? Hang on a minute, is his dad putting money in the team, and then as a consequence, is he only in the team because people are like, has he been people paying for him to be in the team? There were players making mercurial comments about that kind of stuff, and that must have been incredibly divisive as well. But yeah, at the same time, you had players with nothing but good things to say about him. So I mean, it's difficult, wasn't it? Brett Pittman had dropped down the leagues to come and play for us. But
Brett Pittman, the highest goal scorer in association football currently.
Well,
Brett Pittman.
But if you get my meaning about Pittman, I think when we signed him, everyone was saying, "I'm not being funny, but give this guy chances. He's going to score goals." I think Pittman finish that season with 10 or 12 goals, and yet it just seemed like he couldn't hit a bull's ass with a banjo. He looked out of shape. He looked really heavy. Just like it, just So the whole thing was just. The loanees, we had loanees sort of join and be superb at the start. Johnny Smith was a good example. Johnny Smith ended up having problems with a virus. Jordan Stevens started brilliantly and then faded so badly very, very quickly. Dominic Thompson was another one, 3 assists on his debut. And then just went from boom to total bust. We went through 7 goalkeepers.
I was going to say the goalkeepers, it says it all really. If you say that any team has 7 goalkeepers put the shirt on in a season, you'd probably say, without knowing who they were, what league they were in, what position in the league they're in, you'd probably say they'd be relegated. Because, 7 goalkeepers is a joke. Yeah. That's the one position where you, ultimately, I think last season, we probably fell victim to having 2 quite good goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. I think a gaffer needs to have their number one, and he is there between the sticks, week in, week out, organising his defence, commanding his box and making it his own. And you can't do it when there's 2 goalkeepers, let alone having 7 on the pitch.
Yeah, it truly was. Truly was awful. But look, listen, we can spend all day talking about how awful the season was, and I'm sure we're going to dip in and dip out. But bearing in mind we're an entertainment industry, gents, let's not spend too long.
Sorry, my fault. Pessimistic.
Revisiting the collective season, because we all know it was thoroughly miserable. Let's talk a little bit about the build up to the game against the Pox. So obviously, start of the season, things weren't too bad. Like, we'd managed to get a few high scoring points on the board. We're doing all right. Pittman had been amongst the goals, like we said. Matt Smith had been amongst the goals. Johnny Smith had been amongst the goals. Jordan Stevens had been amongst the goals. Jack Paymas, as I said, he was off the mark, and things weren't looking too bad going into the 28th of November. I think one of the things that really sticks in my mind, there was a lot of 3-stand banter flying around on the socials, guys. Who's got recollections of the 3-stand banter?
Well, they've only got 3 stands.
Social media was a lot of fun. Inevitably, it's their Achilles heel, isn't it? And it just seems like one of those things that we can say to Oxford fans, and they've got literally no comeback.
The fact they've got people hiring out forklifts to go and stand behind, to park them behind that stand and hoist themselves up when they've got a game against an Arsenal or a Man City or something on telly. Even, I think, probably last season, they probably had... not last season, the COVID season, when they couldn't have fans in the ground, was the prime opportunity for Oxford fans to watch every single game with basically a season ticket by getting a loyalty card at Jewson's. Like, it was sensational, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Forklifts, ladders, pallets. You could just, you had one guy drove his car up, didn't you? I think it was there was some sort of makeshift platform that he'd put on the back of a pickup or on the roof of a car. But they were managing to do it, weren't they? They were managing to do it. But I think one of the real pleasures for me at the time was I'd become acquainted with Will Fowler, who you'll all remember was the admin at the time. And I was on a WhatsApp group with Will and a few other town fans that work in the football industry, and whose paths had crossed with me over various sort of points over the years. And Will essentially said that just before he left the county ground, he'd sent a tweet out that was essentially having a little dig at Oxford and the fact that they've only got 3 stands. And it was obviously on the official club Twitter. So when the Swindon Town coach pulled in, he heard some bloke in a Scouse accent shouting at the top of his voice, who's that bastard that tweeted that then? Who's that that did this? Who's that did that? You know, like having a go about the tweets. And lo and behold, around the corner from this corridor where all this shouting is coming from comes a red-faced Carl Robinson. And he'd been directed towards the Swindon Town media, head of media, who had reliably been informed, had tweeted out about the 3 stands. And he's probably laid into Will and had to be essentially pushed away to stop him throttling Will Fowler. So it was good to know that before a ball had even been kicked, our admin was boiling piss.
Fantastic. I'm also, that game as well against Oxford was the only game I've ever done this. I sent a message to every single player on Instagram, just a paragraph about the rivalry and what it means to Town fans and stuff. And the only person that came back to me was Jordan Lydon, just put a fist emoji. But
Nice.
I sent a message. I haven't done it since, but maybe I should have done it in the Port Vale game in the summer because it's clearly good luck.
No, well, listen, I'm not at all surprised. Jordan Lydon, bit of fire in his belly. One of the heroes of the summer that hung around at our, when our club hit rock bottom. It's a real shame Jordan Lydon's not around moving forward. I mean, I don't want to go too far down the Jordan Lydon rabbit hole. There's a whole different conversation whatsoever. But on his day, by far the best footballer in the league for me, by far.
Yeah, it's sad that he hasn't got a club currently because, as you say, absolute Rolls Royce for a footballer. It's just a shame that he's made a Weetabix, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, rather, yes. But look, I mean, moving forward. So there was obviously the 3 stand banter. I think do you think it's fair to say that even though we hadn't got off to a bad start, I think one of the things that really charms us about this particular result was the fact that it was like it always seems to me, Joe, I don't know how you feel about this, but whenever I need Swindon Town to lift my spirits, for whatever reason, they never seem to be able to do that for me. But then by the same token, when I'm not expecting it, they always just produce something totally out of the hat, which, like some kind of fickle mistress, just keeps me coming back for more. It's something really intoxicating about it. I mean, I'll give you an example. Those regular listeners to the show will have heard that hopefully you've listened to the Paul Caddis show where Paul came and did a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge takeover at the county ground last week. And we had the most incredible day with Paul. We paraded the trophies around the pitch. We've had Paul in the town end with us, all the fans mixing with him. It was the most emotional day. Absolutely tremendous. There is a Swindon Town fan in the world that will not be able to connect with the emotional potential of such a day. And then we go and give that kind of performance out on the pitch. So if you get my meaning, if ever there was a day where you kind of hoped that Swindon Town would deliver for us, I could kind of predict that it wasn't going to be the day that Paul Caddis came down and paraded the trophies in front of the Crew fans. And it just weren't to be, was it? But
no, I think the thing is with Sporting Swindon Town is, I think the reason that one of the reasons that I love supporting Swindon is that when we have a really good moment or we have a moment of, winning a derby, it doesn't happen every year. It's not like watching Man City and winning the Premier League every single year without fail and you've won it by December. Swindon Town, you support them and we're shit for 2 years and then we'll win a league. And it makes it more special because you have moments where, you're getting relegated and you're getting smacked on Sky Sports by Burton Albion. The embarrassment makes the good times that much sweeter, I'd say.
Yeah, I would make you right. But I mean, look, fundamentally, they'd had the hoodoo over us for the best part of 20 years. So,
massive moment.
I was going into that game. I was throwing out the abuse on social media. And part of me was going, I know this is going to come back and blow up in my face, but you know what? To hell with it. Let's just go with it. It's a local derby. And I thought everything I'm putting out is going to just blow up horribly in my face. So I wasn't actually I'll be honest with you. I weren't expecting a win. Away from home as well, you're thinking a point would be a terrific result. A point would be amazing. Were you expecting a win, Joe? Were you expecting a win?
No, not at all. The only game that I've ever gone into Swindon Oxford actually fairly confident was the Canio season, and we should have won that game. I mean, I'm sure you were there as well. We've all seen the game. We were all over them, and we didn't deserve to lose ultimately. And in a way, I think, did we get a red card at 0-0? And then it seemed like, especially for a certain period of the sort of the mid 2010s, we had a team of Vigouroux and Branco and Thompson, and every single game, at least one of those players would get sent off without fail. Vigouroux loved the red card against Oxford. And you go into the game, you know, even the season, I think, was it 2015 when did we get relegated? Was it Fankasi Dabo, or 2017? Dabo scored the opener. At that point, obviously, we'd been relegated pretty much. It'd been done. We had a full house. We had the tifos that Great Western Reds had set up. It was a great atmosphere. 1-0 up, couldn't believe it. And then, you know, normal service resumes, and Chris Maguire and co come and ruin the day. It's just, yeah.
Chris Maguire too.
Oh, that man! My God, that man! But yeah,
so
it seemed
impossible. Joe, you weren't expecting. What about you, Chris? Like, going into that game, I mean, if you get my point about the fact that whenever you can't really expect a win from Swindon, but they always delight you unexpectedly. But going into that game, do you remember how you were feeling, Chris? Were you?
I was actually dreading going into that game, but and this is probably the only time during that whole season I can give credit to Sheridan. He tried something different and it worked. Putting Broadbent up front and whatnot, and they couldn't handle him, could they? They just couldn't handle him, and for that as well, it's. I mean, obviously, he got both goals, which is what I'm sticking to.
What about you, Ellis? What were you expecting, mate, going into that game? Were you just sort of like, batten down the hatches and we'll take whatever we can get, but it's probably unlikely to be a win, or were you supremely confident? Where was your head at?
I was confident. I'm always confident going into games like that. I was actually disappointed with a 2-1 win. I wanted a 3-0 win, but, you know, I'll take it.
Oh, bloody hell. Joe, all I can say there is the folly of youth, isn't it, with the champ?
I was going to say, where's that come from? Bloody hell. Give me a dose of what you're having.
Hey, one thing I will say about that game as well, through early in that season, obviously, we had Kovar in on loan. And for most of the first half of that season, before it back, it was an absolute disaster. But he was absolutely brilliant in that first half.
Yeah, he was solid, wasn't he? He was solid, Kovar, against Fox.
The annoying thing is, Kovar is actually a very good goalkeeper. He actually is. He's not bad. I mean, you don't play for Man United for as long as he has if you're absolute dross.
Hey, listen,
it's just a case of having no fans in stadiums is a lonely place for most players anyway. But when you're a goalkeeper that starts conceding loads of goals, you've clearly got quite a toxic dressing room at the time as well. You're changing from gaffers, and the gaffer that brought you in, who's a Man United fan, and his son's in the academy, so he's played with the manager's son, to having John Sheridan come in, who's, you know, Marmite at the best of times. I mean, it must have been a difficult place for the kid.
I think really with Kovar, I mean, a couple of things. I'll give you a goalkeeper's perspective. I just think, you know, a makeshift or ever-changing sort of back line, you know, where you've got sort of like old stagers like John Grounds came in, just hadn't really kind of, it just didn't happen for him, did it? And it's interesting, again, we go on about things that Cad said. I mean, you know, Paul Caddis on the show last week was talking about the fact that for the senior pros, that season was so much harder because they just got used to, you know, the ingredient that is unique to fans being in the stadium. And actually, for most of the young pros, it was actually a blessing for them. You know, like Matty Smith played like, you know, carefree, and it's one of the reasons why I think he was so impressive for us. And certainly I know that's what Paul feels. But Kovar was weirdly, he was the kind of exception to that rule, wasn't he? I mean, he was a youngster that, you know, you can't, we're all clutching for straws as to why it didn't work for him at our place. I can only say, I don't think it was fan related. I think fundamentally it was just he was playing behind a really shoddy back line. just that just lost its way. I mean, Cad's by his own admission, had a very poor season by his own standards, and as the season progressed, he fell further and further out of football. I think John Grounds is a really interesting one because obviously he's gone off to Exeter the following season, and we've all seen what Grounds he's gone and achieved with Exeter. So there was certainly plenty of fuel left in his tank, whereas we were all writing him off and his legs had gone, and he had nothing more to offer. And then when we've been using Tom Broadbent, who you would have thought would have been a superb centre after throw into that mix, we were using him as a makeshift striker. Like it was
with Anthony Grant as centre back.
Yeah, exactly that. It was just completely bonkers, wasn't it? It was like they would sooner play Tom Broadbent up front and play Paul Caddis as a central holding midfielder than play Broadbent in his natural position. Like, just utterly bonkers. So I mean, I thought it was tough on Kovar, but it just seemed like with every like you get with makeshift defenses, the sort of weird, unpredictable nature of where the goals came from. I mean, I'm trying to remember one of the games. Was it Sunderland at home where he was just so hopelessly wrong-footed, or was it? It might have been Plymouth away. And no, I seem to remember it was in front of the Stratton Bank, and I can't remember the goal, but it didn't p-roll quite as slow as Tyree Shade this season. But there was a goal that just seemed to take an age to clamber across his line, and the ball's just crept over the line, and it was just like, oh my God.
I think mentally he's probably clocked out. Like it was such a torrid time for him. I mean, the kid's playing in the Europa League this year.
Yeah.
Like he's a very good goalkeeper. Burton Albion fans love him. As you say, I think playing behind a back four that changed every week and had players playing out of position, and it was just that whole team. It was just a mess. So I think at the time, don't get me wrong, if you scroll far enough down my timeline, I'd imagine there are some distasteful tweets with regards to Mr. Kovar.
Yeah.
But with hindsight, you can't really blame him.
No. But listen, go back to what Chris was saying. So again, we talked about that night and what it was that was so special about that night. And just to be clear, this isn't about us just glorying in the win over Oxford. There was so much more to it. Like I said, there were so many kind of metaphoric elements to that performance, and so there was so much poetry to be found in that game that we're just going to try and interrogate it all. And I think one of the things that's so delightfully, ironically, Swindon Town about that performance is pretty much what Chris was saying about the fact that here is the sort of typically, what do we all love about Swindon Town? The fact that we get the ball down, the fact that we play such intoxicating football, that, we like to win the Swindon way. There is a Swindon identity to how we play football. The irony of that night was that the goals came from such an unexpected source. And the fact that is Silky Swindon Town Football Club, we end up winning the game by throwing a centre half on at centre forward, who by his own admission has never ever played as a centre forward. I remember him telling us about the instructions he had from Mildy, which was just when we pick the ball up, just head look out for the big diag and just quote be a bit of a nuisance. And then if you reflect on how those goals came about, I mean, they were pretty bloody scruffy fair, weren't they? Let's be honest.
100%. Yeah, I think he did his job in terms of what he was brought on to do. But I think the best moment of Broady's game that day was when he absolutely clattered into an Oxford player. I think it was in injury time on the halfway line. I remember it. It was beautiful. It was
2-1 up, and they were breaking, weren't they? The break was on, and Broady's just pulled the most incredible crunching tackle out the back.
The thing is, he got the ball as well, but he absolutely he split him in half. He absolutely ruined him. And that was just what a day. That was perfect way to end it, I think.
But how ironic, Chris, right? That we throw Big Broady on up top, and he ends up doing what he's done with, like I said, two of the scruffy. I mean, the first one was pretty scruffy, wasn't it? We just managed to recycle it. We worked the ball back in the box, and Tom manages to get a swivel on, redirect the ball past the goalkeeper who's dived the other way. But I mean, the second goal, and we'll come on to this when we glory in a happy Tyler Smith day.
Yeah.
But there was something utterly shambolic about that second goal, wasn't there?
I'm not going to lie. At that point, when we were 1-0 down, I'd almost just, because up until that point, up until about 80 minutes, we'd done nothing. We hadn't even looked like scoring. I'd almost written it off. And then suddenly, ball comes in and Sir Tom buries it. And then after that, there's only one team in it.
Yeah, it was utter bedlam. I mean, listen, we mentioned Sheridan a little bit earlier, didn't we? I mean, Ellis, I'll get this from you, mate. I mean, how do you feel about the fact that, you know, we absolutely hammered Shezza earlier, and we couldn't wait to see the back of him, but yeah, here was this kind of bizarrely Jurassic tactical move from a man that ends up being referred to as a dinosaur. And he pulled it off, but not just pulled it off against, you know, some random sort of, you know, some random side from the league, but literally he's pulled it off against our greatest rivals and secured one of our greatest derby wins in modern history with the most Jurassic tactical move you could possibly. Like, I cannot, like, the irony of all of this. Like I said, there's so many poetic moments about that result, but the fact that John Sheridan, it is his undeniably his tactical nous that has led to Broadbent being involved in both of the goals, and both of the goals in such an unswindony kind of build-up sort of that we're not known for sticking in the mixer, and yet we end up getting what we get off the back of that from Sheridan. Like the it's just dripping in poetry and irony, isn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned there as well, Hannah. Sorry, Ellis. You mentioned there about the Jurassic Park links. You know how people post videos of big football moments to the Titanic music? That literally, I mean, the Jurassic Park theme tune just goes hand in hand with that video. That the highlights that.
And we salute Jeff for, and I'm sure if he'll be listening in, and at some point he will retweet the video that we all know about.
Yeah. So sort of going back to your point, Hannah's, I think I don't know if you can call it tactical genius. I think it was more of sort of it was his last sort of option, and he was just lucky that it paid off. But
you're not even willing to give him a little crumb, are you?
No. I think he was just desperate, and he was like, right, Broady, up front, up you go. Genuinely, I don't think any he didn't think that through. He just stuck him up there.
I mean, what about you, Chris? Like, do you give Shez any credit? I mean, I appreciate hindsight's a wonderful thing, but at that stage in the season, the way we felt about him is very different to how we felt about him after Oldham at home last season. So, could you give him any credit at that time?
I am 100% behind Ellis here. I'm thinking it was a last resort. You know, everything else he did wasn't working. So why don't we try this? And he just got lucky that it paid off. I'm not willing to give him any credit whatsoever for that.
It's a little bit like, do you remember when Andy King threw Antoine van der Linden up top? And I am pretty sure that was the end of Andy King's first stint as manager.
I'm like you, old enough to remember that. I'm not so sure Ellis and Joe can, but I certainly can remember that. And it was the same sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't the best player we ever had, was he?
No.
The thing is, what did Sheridan have to lose? Like, he had nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Like the scenes when Broady scored, but obviously, if it didn't pay off, well, no one really liked him anyway.
I just remember, Ellis, after the game, there was a real tangible sense of, do you know what? He's pulled something out of the hat here. That generated him an awful lot of goodwill points.
Yeah,
that certainly carried him through a pretty rocky period. I mean, I think obviously it took a while until sort of we hit January and we got that cracking result away at Ipswich. But I remember feeling at that point in time, like, obviously it was still kind of early in his reign. I think we all pretty much sort of turned our nose up at his presentation photo with the scarf above his head. He didn't look particularly chuffed to be at the county ground, did he? Or on the pitch at Beversbrook, wherever that was taken. But I think just the nature of pulling that rabbit out of the hat, I think actually carried him forward. And there were a couple of moments during the season. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. There were a couple of moments in the season where you sort of thought, you know what? Maybe maybe this guy does know what he's doing. I mean, I seem to remember we had February was kind to us. Like we got a really good home win against Crewe. We got a really good away point against a very competitive Lincoln side. And then we beat Northampton at home. And I remember thinking, do you know what? Maybe it's coming together. But then we would go on these awful runs. Like following that, we ended up losing to Sunderland, lost to Accrington. And then we got beaten at home by Oxford United. Interesting side point. Little is made of Taylor Curran scoring against them, but that's a different story altogether. And obviously, we don't tend to lament on Brett Pittman missing a penalty either. But and then we got beaten by the Gills as well. But there were these little every now and again we had these little glimmers where we were like, nah, do you know what? Maybe he's got something about him. But yeah, I mean, it's very. With hindsight, I feel it's very, very easy to forget those little slivers of goodwill that were generated at 3 or 4 points from the midway point of the season onwards.
For me, the point of that when I thought, we might have a chance of staying up here was the Fleetwood win, and I believe we beat Bristol Rovers the game after that. And that was the point when I thought, hey, we could get after this. But then the game after that, we just went back into the shite which most of the season was.
Yeah, well, exactly as you say, mate. Like I mentioned earlier, yeah, there was Fleetwood, I think 2-0 Fleetwood away, if I recall. Twino got a couple. Then, yeah, Bristol Rovers away, I think. It was away.
Yeah, it was, with Jack Payne got a great winner.
And then you had
that game, yeah.
And then, yeah, we had something like, 4 or 5 defeats on the bounce. I remember there was a particularly heavy hammering at home, I think was really heavy. So... like I said, the history books, and rightly so, will never be kind to John Sheridan. But I think it would be remiss of us to not be honest enough to say that there were a couple of moments where, on the social in particular, the conversation was being had. Is this guy going to pull something out of the hat? But look, we talked about where we all were on the 20th. So moving this on, because I don't want to spend too much time lamenting on that season itself. So we're all, I think we've all established we were at home or with loved ones on the 28th of the 11th, 2020. I mean, it was a peculiar time. There wasn't all of our social freedoms have been clamped right down on. We've had a few contributions from listeners, some of which I'm going to try and fish up now. But I mean, who? I don't know if we want to go straight on to the sense of disbelief as the ball at the back of the net. Who remembers that sort of crazy feeling? I mean, for me, it was a feeling of utter disbelief when the first one went in, let alone the second one. But I mean, who wants to go up first? Who remembers how they felt?
Well, I can remember being utterly sick, and when I went up, I think even the bloody fish was scared.
I was scared myself.
So we've had a couple of cracking contributions. I'm just going to try and find it. I've inadvertently, my fat fingers knocked my notes off, so I'm just trying to find the first of the contributions.
I thought I was going to wet myself when that second goal went in. I'm not going to
lie. Right, so here's a brilliant one from Rachel. So Rachel said, evening, Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. I watched it with my dad. We went nuts and scared my then 12-week-old kitten so much he hid behind the gap in the sofa for about 8 hours afterwards. It was so frustrating not being able to be there, but looking back now, in a way, for me, I loved that it was just with my dad and we could go crazy in the living room and share that moment. I won't get to experience that again. Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. Rachel also goes on to say, loads of texts were coming in on my phone constantly from friends that were also watching it. And it was so obvious how much it meant to all of us. I remember one particular friend was messaging me. This was Debs, was messaging me as she went to the county ground afterwards to welcome the players back. Adrenaline was pumping for days afterwards. I mean, there's quite a lot to get into there, guys, isn't there? I mean, Joe, you've got a similar story. You were saying about, obviously it was a special moment with your nan. I mean, it's hard. Chris sort of touched on it, Joe. It's hard to sort of recreate the majesty of those particular moments, isn't it? Like Chris was saying, for like 84 minutes, we've pretty much gone yeah, this is gone. Like, there's no chance. The way that the way patterns of play was also predictable. We were like banging our heads against a brick wall, and then just out the blue that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of football, isn't it?
I think. What did you, first of all? I mean, I know. Do you remember when Broady came on the show? And for those of you that want to go back and listen to it, if you go on our YouTube page, track right the way back to the very first show we uploaded, and it was one night in Oxford, and Tom came on for his show debut, and he told the story about he came on the pitch, and the players just assumed that he'd gone on to the wrong end of the pitch, and he said Tyler Smith walked up to him and said, like, mate, what are you doing? And Tom's like, I'm up front with you. And he said Tyler just smiled, gave him a fist bump, and said, well, let's go then.
I love that.
And let's go, they did. And he also said that it was almost like he'd been on the pitch about 15, 20 minutes before he actually scored. But he said it literally went in the click of a fingers. And that was really uncharted territory for him, because he said as a centre-half, you play yourself into the game. But he said as a striker, he just felt he was running around, just having fun, being a nuisance with literally nothing to lose. So he was having the time of his life. And then obviously he hit the back of the net. I mean, what did you think when he scored, Joe? Like, did you feel that in the build-up it was coming?
No, but I actually remember, because I was with my nan, and Rachel's comment. It's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, at such a hard time for people across the world, being isolated and not being able to do what we took for granted, essentially what we do take for granted now, to share those moments of watching football games with people that you wouldn't usually watch games with, it's quite special. And obviously her dad, that's a lovely memory for Rachel, so I really sort of resonate with that experience. But I remember one of my girlfriend's best friends from university is an Oxford fan, so he was giving me the absolute, like, the most shithousery text messages for 85 minutes of that game were flying in. He was loving life, and then suddenly he went very, very quiet. And I thought I'd leave it until full time, thinking it'd be 1-1. Obviously, we scored very late on to win it. And I mean, the best experience from that day was just blowing his phone up with pure muggery. It was fantastic.
I've got a similar story, Joe. So obviously, because of the nature of lockdown, when we went into lockdown, my eldest daughter's now ex long-term boyfriend was living with us all the way through lockdown, and the amount of shit housing I had to put up with him. And the worst bit about it is, those of you that are regular listeners to the show will know me, will know where I live. I live on the London-Kent border. I'm not a million miles away from Palace, Charlton, Gillingham. I've got a pretty awful catchment of clubs around here. And I'd grown up with like Millwall, West Ham, Charlton fans giving me dog's abuse because I've been a Town fan since I was 9-10 years old, all the way through secondary school, you can imagine. And then lo and behold, my eldest daughter, who's 22 now, she meets a guy that's, was a long-term partner, and he's a massive Charlton fan. So he would absolutely delight in my misery. And I don't mind telling you, there's no love lost between us now, me and this guy. But oh my God, like he was merciless with the banter. So I was sitting there like going through, you imagine that season, like every time I sat and watched Town and I Follow, you kind of wished you hadn't. And he would just like, there was no tact. He would just give it to me all the time, whenever he could. But that particular day, I remember they'd gone out for a walk. They'd gone to do the old, you were allowed to go out and walk the dogs, weren't you? As long as you stayed a certain like distance apart or avoided people. They'd gone out and walked the dogs. And he came back in and we were losing 1-0. And I remember he just literally laughed in my face. And if I just literally wanted to throttle him, like just wanted to throttle him. And he could see the look on my face. I wasn't taking it lightly that day. I wasn't taking his banter. So he laid off a little bit. And then I remember they came in and sat next to me on the sofa. So I'm sat in the middle of this big sort of like 4-5-seater sofa. And I've got my laptop perched on the coffee table. And I'm sat on the edge and I'm chewing my nails, chewing my knuckles, biting my thumbs, all that stuff. And when the equaliser went in, I screamed so loud that our next door neighbours came and knocked on the door to check that we were all okay. I went absolutely batshit mental. I don't mind telling you. And please, one of you guys tell me I wasn't the only one that went batshit mental when that first one went in.
Yeah, I actually like screamed, like let out a scream. Yeah, probably someone thought I had died or something, but yeah.
Ellis, it was cathartic on so many levels, though, wasn't it? I think there genuinely was something like, again, just going to reiterate, this show is not about the fact that we beat Oxford in the derby. It's not as Tim Potter's that. There was something I mentioned all those wonderfully flowery words earlier when I was going through my introduction. I was saying it was just like, it's kind of hard to sort of explain. It was the passion, irony, despair, triumph, unlikely heroes, pantomime. It had everything, but against that backdrop of COVID, where we were all locked up, it was so miserable, so desperate, and I had to sit. And also, as much as we love our loved ones, I think there was also something in, like I said myself, like, my daughter's boyfriend giving me the same banter he was giving me every week was really kind of grating on me. So when we've hit the back of the net, it literally was my finger to the lips moment, and like two middle fingers up right in his face, like just loving every second of that. There was a lot of cathartic kind of outpouring, I believe, for that first goal.
Well, for me, it was slightly different as well, because obviously we were all locked down, so it was just me and the girls, and it's not very often where they're all three of them are with me, and we all loved that goal. Just when that, not even the 2-1 goal, the 1-1 goal, I think we had more passion than we did the winner.
I'll never forget the line that I gave to our neighbours. Like, she's knocked on the door, and then she's backed off halfway down the drive. And I've opened the door, and I'm like, I must bright red, but I've obviously looked a little bit heightened, shall we say? And she was like, I just wanted to check you're all okay. I just heard like this almighty scream, and I was like, it's football. We've just equalised against Oxford. And she's like, right. And they're all Liverpool fans, so she just didn't get the context. She was like, okay. I'm like, no. That's like the equivalent of like you lot scoring against Everton. And then she was like, oh, right. Okay, right you are. And then she just walked off. But yeah, very special moment that, wasn't it?
But I mean, I can't imagine what would have been like to be in the ground that day. You know, that would have, I mean, I was at Mansfield the other week, and I absolutely loved that. But if we were in the ground that day, that was off the charts, wasn't it? If we're in the ground that day, off the charts.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest, I mean, not one of the greatest losses of COVID. Obviously, COVID was horrible, but we were robbed of an absolute, like, once in a lifetime away day there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, do you remember there's a couple of stories that Broady wanted me to tell? Broady sadly couldn't be with us tonight. But the first one was Broady recalled the goal that he's obviously scored, like the first of his 2 goals, as he likes to tell us. And he said that if there'd been fans in the ground that day, like, yeah, he mirrors what you guys are saying. He said he 100% would have given it the most titanic knee slide to the corner. But he said as it was, he just sort of stood there kind of being mobbed by everyone. And there was almost like a sense of anticlimax to it, that it was still unbelievable. But at the same time, it was kind of weird and eerie and sort of just sort of hard to explain. And you'll recall, guys, that when we finally got Tom to come to the county ground with us, we had this really, really touching moment that I thought really says a lot about Tom, and how he feels about the game, and how much he appreciates what he's got. He said that one of the saddest things about the sort of the quirky nature of the legendary status that he's achieved, having did what he did that night, was the fact that the song, when he returned to the county ground, he said Mildy told him that there was about 200 fans in the car park, and there were fireworks going off, and they're all celebrating and whatnot. And he said he's walking up the side of the Arkles. He's got Jonah following him. I think DJ was chasing after him as well. And he said he heard the fans singing his name, and he said he just couldn't believe it because he wasn't that kind of player. He had never enjoyed that level of popularity, and that's when it kind of hit him how massive it was. But then he said he kind of got in. I think he said he got in his car afterwards, and he's driving home, and he kind of was like, "Yeah, I've been robbed of a really, really special moment." Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, and you'll remember last season we got Tom to come and visit us for the Rovers game, and he came in the town end with us. And he said to me as he was going into the ground, he said, "You know what? All I ever wanted to hear was that song being sung in the county ground." He said that's one of my biggest regrets of my career. So similar where we've got Paul Caddis presenting a trophy last week, one of my most memorable moments will be standing next to Tom Broadbent in the town end when everybody started singing "Who Put the Ball in the Oxford Net," Super Tommy Broadbent, and seeing the look on his face. Like, it absolutely meant the world to him. And of course, it will never quite be as magical as it would have been at the time, enjoying it in real time. But I think we went some way to, sort of completing a chapter for him, so to speak.
And there was silence. Someone speak.
Well, how do you literally how do you follow on? Like, do you know what? One of the best things about this show, and it literally was that with Caddis last week, was getting every now and again we get an opportunity to rub shoulders with people that become absolute legends. Like, we actually get an opportunity to do that in the flesh, and what an honour! Like, it's very, very hard. You can say what I've just said is a bit schmaltzy and a bit like make you sick, but like, seriously. Like, to be next to Tom Broadbent when you walk in the town end with him and everyone starts singing that song is a special moment. To get the opportunity to walk into the town end with Paul Caddis last week and be with him while he presents that trophy on the pitch to our fans that he didn't get a chance to present in 2020. Those are very, very special moments. So, no, look, I'm glad they kind of stop you in your tracks because they're very, very hard to follow, aren't they, when you describe them like that?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, go on, Joe.
Oh, now you all want to do it.
No, I was just going to say, I find there are moments where we do shows, we speak to people, and we chat, and it's kind of surreal. Like, and the best thing about it, all of this sort of is, you idolise these players and these men, and genuinely, they're the most down to earth people. They're really thankful. I've had 2 a.m. text conversations with Paul Caddis, which, saying it out loud, doesn't feel like it's real. But the man, he genuinely loves Swindon Town Football Club. It means the world to him, and it's just to see someone that came through the Celtic Academy, one of the biggest clubs in the world, Scottish as you like, nothing to do with Swindon. It was a job for him, essentially, and we've left such an impression on the man that he would tell anyone that he basically is a Swindon Town fan.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And likewise, going back to Broady, that here you've got a guy who prior to that night was a job in, appreciate that the guy had represented, sort of king and country. He'd served in the armed forces. This guy's a hero. This guy is literally an absolute hero. Then he goes on to become a footballer, joins us from Bristol Rovers, which is a top shithouse move opportunity. But, he's just a jobbing centre-back. I think he was primarily popular because, obviously Tom had clearly gone and served. And I think to football fans, there's always a sense of pride if one of your players has had something to do with, with the armed forces. And Tom was okay, wasn't he? But he had his flaws. He was in and out of the team. But the romance of football, you can't get away from it. Like, to think, Tom's all right. He'll tell you himself. He's handy enough, but he's honest enough to know that, he was a decent lower league, kind of centre back stroke squad member. But that night, he transcended all of that, didn't he? He literally became sort of, I don't know.
A hero.
I'm certain I'm not just getting carried away with myself because we name a show after the guy. Like, there is something that happened that night that, in the eyes of all Swindon Town fans, there is not a fan in that ground that would not buy Tom Broadbent a drink if they stood next to him in a pub.
Oh, yeah. easy. It's just, but the thing is when we've had him on, he's such a nice bloke as well, and he's one that you would be proud to call a mate, despite what he's done for our club.
Chris, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think if you could wish that moment to happen to a footballer, you would hope that it would happen to a bloke like Tom.
Oh, exactly, and you would also hope that would happen to a bloke when there's fans in the, so they can actually appreciate and share that moment with him.
Yeah, for real. But I think, like I said, I mean, even though his career with us ended the kind of the way it did, and off he went to Eastleigh, and obviously now he's plying his trade at South Shields. And congrats, Tom, with your new employment, working in the financial services sector, as well as obviously playing for South Shields. I think the lovely thing, if you're Tom, I think it's a really nice thing to think that he's got certain moments in his career that he's such a nice guy that you're kind of chuffed that he's got a moment like this that he'll never forget. And it's something we can all share, because it wasn't just any game, was it? This is the thing. Whilst we're not just celebrating, we're not just being tin pot and celebrating a win over Oxford. The context of this, the whole thing was that not only was that a magical moment, but it was a moment we could all share, sort of, and we'll never forget, because it was against Oxford.
Well, the one thing about that is as Rach and Joe have said, is how the personal feelings of that added into the all around thing about that. And he's such a nice bloke. Look, to be honest, Tom Broadbent is better than South Shields. He should be playing at a higher level, but he's such a nice bloke. But with that with that game as well, when he said that, how much it meant to people around because of the time it happened, it's so nice to hear that it's something apart from the fact we beat Oxford, that how important it was to some people.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. Well, listen, we've had, I mean, look, again, we'll encourage everyone to share their moment, even if it sounds a little bit repetitive. Let us know where you were on that night, what your recollections of it were, how you feel about it, or if there's any little nuggets or little things that were said or funny text message you received. Come on, share it with us. Send us a tweet or send us a DM. Contact us via Instagram, or hit that speaker request button and come on and tell us yourself for your chance to win a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge goodie bag, including a personalised hoodie and lots of cool signed stuff from the club. Listen to me, cool, like I'm some kind of down with the kid's dad. But Nathan's done just that. So hello, Nathan. Good evening. Nathan says that he, again, similar story to what I was saying. He had people staying with him, friends that had chosen to stay with him during lockdown. And he said, I have a very emotional story of how me and my friend hugged madly in my living room while my wife shook her head and called us pathetic. And then when the second goal went in, we screamed so loud that it scared my wife. What an evening. So yeah, similar story to what we were all saying before. Stories of scaring the neighbours, scaring the pets, scaring your loved ones. What's obviously when the ball hit the back of the net, Chris, were there decibels at your end?
Oh, there were. Well, like I say, because scared the fish.
Yeah.
But it's the one thing about that. It's like it's not very often I get to watch football with all four of us, and it was great that it hit us all the same. But the youngest one isn't. She's not particularly big fan of football, but she got into it, and that was. But while we were all there, I think we just had it was a different rapport with everyone, wasn't it? It was while you're locked up with all your family at that time because you couldn't go anywhere, to just enjoy that moment together. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting point, actually, Chris, about the sharing of that moment. Because, like I said, I mean, my daughter, there wasn't really a lot to cheer. You know, my eldest daughter she's been to the county ground a couple of times, and I mean, she needs to wash her mouth out, but she'll tell you that it's not the top of her kind of entertainment priority list. I know, like, don't ask me why. Some people you just can't legislate for them, but for her, she tells you she'd sooner do other things on a Saturday afternoon. But there was something about that game, and I think just the fact that I think she really enjoyed just sharing in my complete unadulterated ecstasy that at a time was in pretty short supply. So. But listen, obviously we talked about the first goal, but then we talked about the fact there was joy because we weren't on the receiving end of another defeat at the hand of Oxford. But a few minutes later, enter stage right. a certain Tyler Smith. Also, Tom Broadbent says an absolute charlatan that never got a touch on his second goal. I mean, I'm going to tell you what I did. I'd already, like I said, scared the neighbours or made them feel there was some kind of domestic incident outside my property. The second goal went in, and I sat there for about 2 seconds, and I just stared at my daughter, and I stared at the boyfriend in a state of complete and utter shock. I then literally ripped my Swindon Town shirt off, ran out into my kitchen, started swirling my shirt around, and then was literally doing laps of the garden, swirling the shirt around. At which point, the neighbour that had already get out the window went, "That you just got 2-1 up."
Well, Mark, unfortunately, you don't have the security clearance to know what I did.
I'm drawing my own conclusions now, Chris.
Now, I'm really interested to hear how many holes were punched into walls at Ellis's end. What did you do, chap?
Yeah. Well, I can't remember. I was filled with that much adrenaline. I literally can't remember. I think. Well, I screamed and ran around my house, and my mum told me to shut up because I was being too loud.
So there were parties in the streets of Melksham that night.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Well, so Chris says you haven't got the security clearance. Ellis was being told off by his mum. Joe, what were you doing? I'm sure it involved some kind of alcoholic solution.
Yeah, to be honest, I just remembered I was cooking a brisket that day on a smoker in my garden, and I forgot about it after the game. So I watched it around my nan's house. Obviously,
you were quite literally cooking the ox.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. I put it on before I went around my nan's house to watch the game. Got back. I think I went past or via Tesco's to get a few beers in. Probably got through a 12 box of Asahi, and then realised, shit, the brisket's outside. To go and find the cremated remains of what was going to be a tasty lunch.
So brisket became the biggest pile of burnt ends man has ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what actually happened in Swindon?
So this is the thing. I mean, I would love someone to come on and tell us, because obviously we're all out of town, right? Chris, you're right up north. Ellis is in Melksham. Joe's down in Hampshire. I'm on the London-Kent border. I mean, I would love if anyone was like had a window open, or I mean, I've heard stories. I remember Nathan telling us he was hanging out of his window. He lives in. Who was it? I think Nathan at the time was living in Oxfordshire, or somebody was, and I remember them saying that they were leaning out the window, like just pelting it out about the fact that we'd just done. I mean, literally, he was behind enemy lines, and he was giving it out the window. I would love to know what the decibels sounded like in and around Swindon when the ball's hit the back there, because there must have been a bloody enormous collective cheer going on in the domestic, in the humble streets of Swindon. So if there is anyone that can tell us that story, please do. Either drop us a text, hit speaker request, but bring that moment alive for us, because Chris is a valid point. I would love to know what it sounded like in Swindon when that ball hit the back of the net. I can only imagine. It's a little bit like when you decide to leave a game early and you're in the car park, and we get a late equaliser, or there's that roar that gets you wanting to kind of run back in the stadium. But obviously we couldn't do that. So I mean, I'd love to know what it was like. I wonder whether it was. I mean, Chris, could it be like one of those moments where there's an earth tremor in San Francisco, and it just gets everyone kind of pausing? What the bloody hell was that? I really don't know, but I mean,
it could have been. But Claire's listening. She must have been bashing her drums. Why doesn't she come on and tell us what she was up to?
Yeah, come on, Claire. Earn your corn. Let us let us know what it's all about. But if anyone could come on and bring it to life for real, don't forget, as I said earlier, quality contributions will win a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge goodie bag. So yeah, do make a point of coming on. But listen,
it's like one of those things. I honestly can't remember. Like, obviously, some games are for reasons of work and whatnot that I can't go to, and I end watching I follow. But it's never been that intense. Never ever that intense for what it was that day.
Well, good evening, Claire. Julie requested, and here she is. Come on, Claire. You must know what it was all about that night. Can you bring that moment to life for us? Claire, unmute your speaker. Come on, we can't add you and then you go quiet on us.
Right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening for you.
I remember running from my living room to my kitchen like a lunatic. The kitchen window was open. All I could hear was a collected about 3 streets worth of screams from, it must have been every household for the next 3 streets. I never realised I had so many Swindon supporters living so close to me.
And whereabouts, you tell us the street, Claire, but whereabouts in Swindon do you live?
Dorking.
So you're in Dorking and you literally had about 3 streets worth sort of scream. What must that be like?
But the funny thing was, I was like, they were all screamed at the same moment. So I ran outside to the end of the garden, and unknowingly a neighbour 2, maybe 3 doors away had done the exact same thing to see where the screams go. And we looked at each other with just that look of yes. And every time I see that said neighbour, we always give that very same look as if to say, I remember that night.
Claire, I wonder whether said neighbour is Paul Merriman, who's saying hello at the moment. Paul, if you are able, it'd be brilliant for you to jump on and bring the moment alive, or anyone else for that moment. So, Claire,
I also remember, as a result of that, when I went to work, my supervisor at work is a Town End season ticket holder, and we just both walked in that morning singing the Sir Tom Broadbent song, and then about a week or 2 later, she gave me a Sir Tom Broadbent tree topper to go on my tree, and it has been on my tree as a topper ever since.
Now, it's funny because you're not the first person to tell us that Tom Broadbent sits atop of their Christmas tree.
Yeah.
There is, I would say, we're probably getting up to sort of double figures now of people that have told us that I think the craze was started by a certain Jack Lampard. Hello, Jack. Evening to you, by the way. And Jack is obviously the gentleman with Broadbent tattooed on his right bottom cheek. Long story. We won't bore you, but he's so I'm pleased that we're speaking to another body that's got Tom Broadbent on top of his Christmas tree. Is Tom Broadbent going to be on top of your Christmas tree this year, Claire?
Absolutely. What a sort of question is that?
Bravo, Claire. So Claire's a story of how 3 streets in Dorking erupted with absolute racket. If anyone else has got their own individual stories, send us a tweet, send us a DM, hit speaker request, and bring that moment alive for us as the ball hit the back of the net. Because I would love to hear what you've got to say. Come on.
I throughout that segment, I texted my mate who's an Oxford fan and asked him the question. And well, I just asked him, what are the memories of the 2-1 Broadbent win in 2020? I won't tell you exactly what he said, but it's 2 words, and it starts with F and it ends with F.
Well, they can be salty all they like.
Joe, why have you got a friend that's an Oxford fan?
He's my girlfriend's friend, but he's the best Oxford fan I know.
How many do you know?
1.
So he's an acquaintance. He's not really a friend. Paul's saying, regrettably, he's in bed. He's up early. He's going to try and come on the show on Saturday. Paul, listen, I know you're listening in. That's why you can send us a tweet or a DM, mate. You can bring that moment alive, ladies and gents. You don't have to come in and disturb your entire house by doing so. But nonetheless, let's move swiftly along. We're going to continue to take calls on that Broadbent theme and that particular moment. I mean, look, the thing is, it's. I guess what we're trying to say is just to recall. It's not about us celebrating a win over our rivals. It's not about that. This is about the romance of football. This is about a little glimpse of light at a time where there was very, very little. This is about sort of that transcend football and the origins, if you will, of legends and just how bizarre and left field and how these things that happen in ways that only football can throw up. But listen, I mean, moving on, guys, if we talk about what football's been like, because obviously that season we talked about start probably for too long about how dreadful that season was. But we talked about football post-lockdown, and we talked about the fact that, you know, there's lots of stuff that we probably, if there was a silver lining from that god-awful season of lockdown, there's lots that we probably don't take for granted as a consequence of maybe we did before lockdown. Just guys, go around you lot individually. Each of you sort of, you know, Chris, I'll start with you. What was probably the one thing that you took for granted about going to the football or supporting Swindon Town that as a consequence of lockdown you no longer do? Or maybe as a consequence of this particular game you no longer do?
I don't know if there's something I no longer do, but the one thing about from the lockdown is I just appreciate the day with mates before. So it's, for me, if I go out to a game, normally for me, going to a game is a day out. It's not going to football. So I don't just turn up just before and leave straight after. I'll go up and I'll meet up with people and whatnot after. But to me, football is a way of keeping in touch with people and then seeing that your mates are all right and that everything's great with them. And I think the lockdown and whatnot emphasised that even more for me.
I'll tell you what, Chris, it's a very interesting point. And, you know, Joe and Ellis, I'll take your view on this because obviously we shared an interesting Swindon Town weekend the weekend just passed, didn't we? But if you had said to me, say 2 years ago, when we really started seeing a big push for the women's game in particular, I kind of was of the opinion that I felt like I was being force-fed a sport or sort of segment of our game that I just wasn't really kind of in the mood for. Like I was like, look, I can take it or leave it. I'm not really that fussed. I was quite sort of closed-minded really when it came to, you know, to the women's game. And I make no apologies for it because I've been on a real journey over the last 12 months and I still am on a very, very steep learning curve with it. But to your point, Chris, I think one of the things that really surprised me was just how excited I was in the build-up to Swindon Town women versus Plymouth Argyle women on Sunday. And to your point, Chris, the football was a really important part of the day for sure. And I was looking forward to seeing a game of football. But there was something really, really quite special in having that opportunity to get in the car, drive around the M25, M3, M4, meet up with you guys, enjoy the football, enjoy the banter, enjoy all the sort of pre-match patter, see all the familiar faces in the Legends Lounge and lots of new faces in the Legends Lounge, go for a meal after the game, again, all that kind of banter, all the patter we normally enjoy on a Saturday, and make our way home. Now, I'll tell you what, my point I'm trying to make is it didn't matter that it was a men's game, a women's game. Like, what mattered was exactly what you were saying, Chris. It was that touch point with my football friends and the opportunity to just sort of, after a long week, go and let off some steam. I don't think I would have been that open-minded had lockdown not happened.
I completely agree on that. And as I alluded to there, it's a bit difficult for me to get to the women's game, but I've certainly with Swindon, my interest in it has peaked up a hell of a lot since then and especially with the club moving them in together. I don't know, for me, you just love all things Swindon Town, don't you? And but the one thing about that is the lockdown and how some people suffered from the loneliness and whatever from just makes the match day for me seem a bit more of a whole experience rather than just going to football. You know, you're going to see friends, so it's a day. It's not just the game.
Yeah, no, I mate, you're right. I mean, what about you? You know, Joe. I mean, you were there obviously at the weekend as well, and Ellis was with me as well. You know, I don't know whether you kind of follow my logic, but there was, I don't know. There's just this. I've definitely got this kind of. It's almost got me to reevaluate the things that are important to me and making the most of when I do leave the house now. Like, I don't tend to find that I'm wasting my time. So yeah, I don't know. I just, it's almost like it's heightened my my willingness to kind of get my ass down the M4 and make the most of seeing all my mates that I like I said, for the best part of 2 years, didn't have that opportunity to do as readily as I would like. Am I chiming with you as well?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think a big thing that's come out of the last year of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge being an entity is I didn't know anyone at Swindon personally. Really, I went to games and I supported town for years and years and years, but I'd never really go with a mate. I'd converted a few of my mates from home to be not Swindon fans, but have an interest in Swindon, and they'd always be down for a London away day to go on the beers and go watch the game and stuff. But it's nice meeting you guys and obviously going to a game knowing that I'm going to meet yourself, Hannah's, or Ellis on the way, and it's just nice to have some faces that you're close with and enjoy Swindon together. And I think it's sort of, to me, football's a family, and it's reinstated the fact that Swindon is my family, and the women's team are a part of that family. We went for a meal after the game on Sunday with Annie and Lanes, and they're absolute gems. Like, their banter's hilarious. They're a good laugh, and it's just, yeah, I think lockdown being as isolating as it was, and then for me to come back, personally come back and build relationships with other Swindon fans and relationships with players and the women's team. It's just, yeah, that's what football should be to me.
Yeah. So, Joe, do you think if lockdown hadn't happened? I mean, look, I'll tell you for a start, I think it's interesting when I think back to the origins of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. I think one of the reasons I never forget, I'd been invited on to speak to Alexi Leilas about something football related. I can't remember what it was, but it was the first time I'd been on Twitter Spaces, and as a consequence of there was such a drive on conferencing sort of technology, and so my eyes were kind of open to sort of opportunities, if you will, to engage, much like we're doing now, but over the digital space. And I just remember sort of, I don't think I would have been in that position to have had that invite to go and speak with Alexi on his show if I hadn't kind of, I don't know, just sort of had my eyes opened to, the various technologies that were unfolding at that time. It just meant my increased awareness then led to, us actually going, there's this really interesting, very easy to use thing that I'm going to use. And guess what? Here we go. And then before you know it, I remember the idea came up for the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, and then we threw the show up within 15 minutes. And lo and behold, we ended up with like a couple of 100 town fans listening in. And so we called that almost like our pilot. And the feedback from it was absolutely fantastic. Like, we were like, look, if we're going to do it, we're going to be glass half full on everything. Listen, I think one of the things that's really important when you put any kind of entertainment piece together is that you try and leave people sort of like, with a smile on their face. And so hopefully they'll want to come back and feel good about engaging with you on your next show and so on and so on and such like. And the feedback seemed to suggest that we were onto something. But so I think that's really, really, interesting. I don't know whether the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge would have actually existed had lockdown not happened, because I think it just increased my desire to want to engage with my football friends. But like I said, also my eyes were open to new tech, Joe. Does that all make sense?
100%, mate. I mean, Zoom calls went absolutely massive through lockdown. I had Zoom calls on the nightly with a couple of mates, and we'd have a beer together over the laptop. We'd get a case of beers in, and we'd get a nice bottle of whiskey, and we'd set up a pub quiz, and you'd just listen to music together or something. And it was silly, but we didn't ever use those technologies other than in the workplace really before lockdown. Even I guess Zoom meetings were a thing if you were chatting to people abroad, but usually you'd find a way to meet up in person, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's mental. If lockdown didn't happen and there were 10,000 people at the Oxford game, does John Sheridan whack Tom Broadbent up front? Because ultimately, I mean, fans would have a grumble. I'm not being funny. If we're 1-0 down...
Can you imagine the booze, as Broady goes on? And then can you imagine what would have gone through Tom's mind? Yeah, you bang on, Joe. It's a valid point.
So, yeah, I mean, I suppose for me personally, the lockdown, the best thing that's come out of it was probably the show.
So, okay. Yeah, I mean, because like I said, it very much kind of normalised the idea of us being in these kind of digital spaces, sort of socially. As you said, Joe, you only really came into these places if it was. I mean, I remember there were a lot of Twitter spaces that I remember seeing going live, and it was all about things I didn't really understand, like NFTs and crypto and all this kind of jazz. But there was never anything real, or there was, there was sort of like, kind of almost like sort of seemingly fanatical religious chat groups that were getting together, things that just weren't my cup of tea. So the idea of doing something like this, yeah, I mean, to think of, yeah, I genuinely don't think there'd be a Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge had it not been for the COVID lockdown. We would just put it to you that way. So, okay, interestingly enough, just give me a yes or no. Chris, do you feel you love Swindon Town Football Club more or less because of lockdown?
More. Certainly, I found that I can appreciate and enjoy the match days more because of what lockdown did.
More. Ellis, how about you?
100% more. I think that the first goal we scored when we were back at the county ground was sort of a feeling that you can't really measure. So yeah, 100% more.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what's very, very interesting. I remember standing there, first game of the season, and I remember, like, this is going to sound like really schmaltzy now, but I remember vividly tears in my eyes in the Carlisle game at home. And it was a shame how that game ended up unfolding. But I remember standing there, and there was something about just being back with everybody. And I felt really emotional. And I'll tell you the thing about that as well is that I remember recalling that kind of the only way I could put this is like unpredictable emotion. So I remember when my twins were born, I remember standing there in the operating theatre and hearing them cry, and just literally it was like nature at work. I just burst into tears that I didn't feel coming on at all. And there's been other moments in my life, like momentous moments in my life. I remember around my wedding day, I remember around christening days, but certain moments when you just overcome by this weight, like almost like a tsunami of emotions that you just don't expect. And I remember, because I'm not quite sure why, but I mean, where I sit, I'm right in the middle of the town then, right out the back. And somehow I found myself, I was halfway going back down the stairs to essentially the spot behind the goal. I was halfway down as the lads were all coming out. And I just remember there was just that cacophony of noise and the sound of the foghorn. And I just remember, it's making the hair stand up on the back of my neck as I say it. I just remember the feeling like, oh my God, like, like this truly is like incredible. Like we've not only had all of the lockdown aspects of it, but we had that god awful season. We've nearly lost the club, but like here we are, and we're all back together. And there was, like, if I recall, we had nearly 10,000 people in the ground that day as well. But it kind of felt like one of those days, like where we have well in excess of 10,000 in the crowd. Like, yeah, it was a very, very special moment. So, yeah, cool. I mean, yeah, wonderful times. I don't know whether I got yeses from all it. So, Chris, it was a yes from you. Ellis, did I get a yes from you?
Yes.
And what about you, Joe?
Yeah, I think so as well. It was just, I remember my first game back last season, it kind of felt surreal. And I think getting back into a full football stadium last season we were getting probably 8,000-9,000 at the start of the season. People properly like going for it, and the atmosphere was actually quite good at times last season. I think at points this year it's been a little poor. But yeah, last year everyone was buzzing to be back into the grounds. It was special. I think it's anyone that said that they didn't at least re-find a certain amount of love for the game after getting back into the grounds is probably telling fibs.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, listen, it's an absolute yes from me as well. Probably to a fault. if hands up, I don't mind telling you that myself. I think the really interesting thing on my personal journey with all of this stuff is that I had a job that kind of allowed me to keep going into work during lockdown. So to a degree, there was a feeling of almost like a bit of a normal routine and rhythm to my life. The weird thing was when I was coming home, it was like dealing with like the kids and their frustrations, because I had a house full of kids. You know, my missus couldn't go off to work. You know, like I said, I was watching Swindon on iFollow, which is an awful experience, even at the best of times. But getting back to the county ground felt so special, and it was quite an emotional kind of reunion. I think anyone that again regular listens to the show or knows about my journey. I mean, we have a 240-mile round trip to get to the county ground every week. I appreciate it's not as long as some people out there, and all credit to you guys down on the south coast and some of you guys up north and Andy and the like over in Norfolk. There are people that have got bigger commutes than me, but we plough an awful lot of mileage into getting to the county ground, and when that wasn't part of my life, I realised just how important that is, to my own kind of sense of escapism. London's an interesting place to live. For those of you that live here or have lived here, you'll know that the city comes with certain pressures, and some parts of London can be very, very happy and decent to live in, other parts not so. As a Swindon fan, surrounded by Palace, Charlton, Millwall fans, as I keep saying, it can be a very lonely place at times. So, but weirdly, like I said, to a fault, I find that getting back to Swindon town, I probably, if I can, I care a bit too much, because I appreciate, as somebody that worked in the football media space for 20 years, I find I have very, very low tolerance for people that kind of over egg the criticism in our current sort of in our current state. I think one of the benefits of running a show is that obviously quite clearly we enjoy a certain proximity of our football club, which means we get to see certain things behind the scenes that maybe most fans don't, which gives us a slightly different frame of reference. Now, that's not a question. That's not me saying we're in the know, because it's not like that. But I think we're connected to the realism of certain decisions that are being taken, and I think it's very, very difficult to sort of stomach some of the harsher criticisms, I would say, of the football club or certain results and so forth. I think my view is very much kind of, I think I probably am a little bit rose tinted, but hey, listen, like I said, it's shoot me. Like, I love our football clubs. Not really much I can say about that, but listen, I mean, so I think we're all sort of the opinion that sort of COVID was good in terms, and I'll tell you what, talking about the broader level as well, the number of plus 10,000 crowds that we've had. I mean, I remember back in the day when when I was involved as a shirt sponsor at the football club, under DiCanio, our crowds last season, I remember having conversations with Nick Watkins and him telling me that, the break-even point for Swindon back then was like 7,000. And it kind of felt to him that it was always a real struggle to get us over that barrier. Well, like last season, I think generally that kind of felt like, well, that's the bare ass minimum standard. Everything was up from there, boys. Would you not agree?
Pretty much, though. I thought last season went really well, and I mean, if even like last season on break even at 7,000.
Oh, we were well above it. I guess that's the whole point. I mean, like,
yeah,
Carlisle, obviously we kicked off with 9-4. I mean, like literally just like track through, like, our home games, if we weren't significantly higher than like 8K, 9K, we had like more 5-figure attendances last season than I can remember in a very, very long time. And obviously, let's not forget the majesty of the Man City game as well, which was just absolutely bloody spectacular.
Yeah, and also the Forest Green and Barrow. Was it Barrow when we opened up the Stratton Bank for home fans as well? So they would have been, what, 12,000?
Yeah, Barrow was 13,355, mate. It was absolutely unbelievable. So I think we're talking about do we love our club more as a conversation as a result of COVID? Listen, it's not just us speaking, guys. I think we speak for a large section of our fan base. in saying that that's got to be the case, right? Like, you know,
I think it's one thing. Well, we all love a club. I don't think we love a club any more or less, but I think we realise how much more important, or how important that club is into helping us deal with how we go through life.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Chris. I think it's probably one of those where the certain games where you are about your ass off a seat and get into the county ground, you're probably more inclined to get your ass off the seat now, right? And go and enjoy some people coming. But listen, I mean, just taking us back to the Oxford game, I'm going to have a little straw poll from you lot. Seeing as we were saying to each other earlier in the week, Chris, happy Tyler Smith Day, which is in effect the Boxing Day to Broadbent Day on the 29th will forever be known as Tyler Smith Day. A yes or no from all of you. Did Tyler Smith get a touch, Crispy?
Well, you know my answer to that. No.
No, he didn't. Ellis?
No.
No. Joe Vincent?
Probably, but no.
Oh, a little bit of splinters in your ass. Well, it's a no from me, ladies and gentlemen. So, we obviously, unfortunately, the FA see it a slightly different way. All of the opinion that Tyler, good luck to you, mate. You get your nod, you get your goal, but we all kind of know the reality. Sir Tom got both. So here's a question for you though. So whilst we're talking about Tyler Smith Day, Chris, do you think Swindon Town would have stayed up if Tyler Smith had been a regular selection rather than just sat on the bench or not even included in the squads?
That's a very, very tough question. I think there's so much more in the mix here. I think if Matt Smith hadn't been treated like shit, we might have had a better chance as well. And Tyler Smith is one thing. If he'd played regularly, we would have had a better chance. Can I sit on the fence with that?
Yeah, because I'll move on to Ellis. Ellis, what do you think, mate? Do you think if Tyler Smith had remained an automatic selection, because he never seemed to want to play him alongside Brett Pittman, did he? But do you think if he did, we would have stayed up?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so because, every time he seemed to be played, he seemed to score.
Yeah.
So, maybe if he did get given that sort of, place in the starting lineup, then we certainly would have seen more goals from him.
To your point, Ellis, Tyler Smith scored 10 goals in 17 starts for Swindon Town Football Club that season. 10 goals in 17 starts. So by virtue, let's if you want to play that logic all the way out, you could argue that he was on track for a 30-goal season, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. So,
and there's not many teams get relegated with a 30-goal striker.
Exactly. So, I think it's sort of it's a weird one anyway, because at the time there was a lot of questions being asked as to why he wasn't being put in the starting lineup. But yeah.
What about you, Joe? Do you think we would have stayed up if Tyler Smith had been a regular starter?
I was just thinking, a team of Travers, Caddis, Conroy, Bowdry, Thompson, Iandlo, Smith, Payne, Giacimi, Tyler Smith, and Scott Twine keeps us up that year. A regular team of that.
Let's also, we've lampooned him earlier, the Port Pie Pele, but Brett Pittman himself got 12 goals in 30 starts. So again, if you play that logic out, if we ended up having a 30-goal striker in Tyler Smith, and I appreciate if they both played together, it's unlikely they would have ended up Tyler probably wouldn't have hit 30. But let's say Tyler ends up scoring 20 goals and Brett Pittman goes on to score 20 goals. Not many teams get relegated with a 40-goal strike partnership, do they? And you've got the big man, little man partnership going on there. I think Brett Pittman had got to a stage where we probably should have just played him as the big lump with his back to goal. Because I actually thought when they did play together, it looked all right.
Well, the thing with those two there as well, if Smith plays with Pittman doesn't have to move. Smith will go and do all the work, and Pittman would have. It possibly would have scored 20 goals because Tyler Smith was a workhorse, and him himself would have they would have probably got 40 goals between them, no doubt. But as a partnership, I think they would have done pretty well.
And can you imagine? I mean, Scott Twine hit 7 in 22 starts. So can you imagine Scott Twine feeding off the scraps of those two as well? So Scott Twine could have pushed on and got, say, more than 10. Essentially, I think the more and more we look at this, I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it, when Tyler Smith left? I remember the official supporters club, Vic got him on. He's a very, very popular boy. He conducted himself, certainly in the eyes of the fans, he conducted himself well, didn't he?
Yeah, it did. But if you've got Scott Twine playing 10 behind those two, we would have stayed up. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I'll make you right. We've got, sorry guys, we've got apologies, by the way, and we were hoping we were going to get Charlie Austin on again tonight. But for anyone that hasn't been paying attention to the World Cup today, you'll put 2 and 2 together and realise that obviously Charlie is deployed down in Australia for Brisbane Roar at the moment, and it's fair to say Australia have had a fairly big day today, guys. Would you not agree?
Yeah, just a bit.
So for those of you that don't know, by virtue of Australia dispatching the Danes 1-0, Australia have made it through to the last 16, along with France. So congratulations to our Australians. And yeah, unsurprisingly, Charlie's probably knee deep in a combination of Aussie beer and media duties down there. And we wish him all the best. But we'll have Charlie will be back on the show next week. So just in case any of you were wondering what might have been happening with Charlie this week. But listen, I mean, what better way to bring that segment to a close than with a little bit of chat about the unsung hero of that night, because obviously the win came courtesy of a certain T. Smith 90. I think it was 90. Was it 90 plus 2, if I recall? So we send Tyler Smith all of our very, very best wishes and firmest tongue in cheek when it comes to crediting Tom with both the goals. But really, really lovely lad, Tyler Smith, and it's good to see him going on doing ever so well for himself at Hull. So it's not. I guess final word from you all guys on that god awful season and the things that have come off the back of it. I think there's quite clear silver linings for all of us, isn't there, in relation to that absolutely dreadful season. Hindsight, I think, is a wonderful thing, and time is a healer and all of that. But I think we've emerged out of that god awful season with just about enough silver linings for us all to not be too bitter about it all. Who wants to go with that, Ellis?
Well, sort of everything happens for a reason, right? So obviously that season sort of got power out of the club, got Clem taking over the club, and if you look at the position of what we're in now, you would sort of take that relegation, because if you look at the stability of the club, like, you can't argue it, really.
Financially, I don't think we've ever been on a better footing, Ellis, and I think that's
exactly
finances being published that, unless there is some significantly sort of iffy skullduggery going, which you would clearly think we'd know about it, because like I said, our budgets are being published. I think the club's finding it's, we certainly in my time supporting the club, I don't think we've ever been on a better footing. The Bertie Black era was interesting because Bertie was such a wealthy chap that, we kind of felt any expenditure was being covered by him. But, in terms of actually clearing debt, us rebuilding our standing with people that might offer us credit moving forward. And it's that obviously we start to speculate on and try and develop the squad on and build the ground on and all these kind of things. I mean, I agree with you. We're in a much better place. How about you, Chris?
I was just saying, look, going back to that as well from that disastrous season, I think we enjoyed last season so much more, starting from that Scunthorpe game, and we had great following to every game. That season was so much better because of the previous season, and because we just started the new era, didn't we?
Well, seventh. All I'll say to you is this: if it cast your mind back to the 7th of January, and the 78th minute of that game, a certain H. McCurdy scuttling down the flank in front of the Arkles. cuts inside and catches their keeper out with an absolute beaut of a finish. You know, at that stage, we're already 3-0 down against, you know, arguably the best football team on the planet. But the roar in the ground was like nothing I have ever experienced. And one of the things that it kind of immediately sort of, I mean, there's, you know, those wonderful black and white pictures of like Chris Kamara that literally sort of like 5-6 years before my time, where you've got people standing up on like, you know, the old Shrivenham Road stand. You've got people standing up on like and things like that, almost like sort of pre-health and safety. I could only imagine what it was like. We had like 30,000 people in the county ground, what it sounded like. That roar on the 7th of January in the 78th minute when McCurdy did that is like, if you could bottle that.
Yeah, you could do, but also I'd like to add to that is experiences from when I was in the stadium. Unfortunately, I was unable to go to that one. But when I was at Walsall, and when we scored, the atmosphere all the way through that game was off the charts. And also the one that the Port Vale home game, and when we scored on that, it was just brilliant. And it's like, that's why you love football.
Yeah. Well, listen, I completely agree with you. How about you, Joe?
I think I can pretty much summarise the 2021 season in 6 words. So I would just literally summarise that entire season. Wellens, Sheridan, Giassimi, goalkeepers, Power, Broadbent. Mic drop.
Nicely done. Well, listen, let's. What a wonderful segment that was. A lot of fun, and thank you for your contributions, those of you that chipped in. We've got very excited. I've got my tickets in the bag. We've got a certain game just down the M23. We've got Crawley at the weekend. I mean, now, interesting one, isn't it? Crawley, obviously owned by the We're All Gonna Make It United ownership group. At the start of the season, there was an awful lot of hype around Crawley. Obviously, cryptocurrency-based consortium. There's about 30 odd crypto brains that make up their ownership group, but they're mainly led by a guy called Preston Johnson. His mate Hunter Orrell and his mate Eben Smith are the kind of front men for the We're All Gonna Make It ownership group. So yeah, at the start of the season, there was so much hype around these guys. Obviously, they built on the hype quite nicely. I mean, obviously, pinched our. I say pinched. He was probably gone anyway. I don't think it was. We were really fighting that hard to keep Dion Conroy at the county ground. No disrespect, Dion. I'm sure you get where I'm coming from. And Dominic Telford as well, who'd obviously been slamming them home for Newport, top scorer in the division last season. Also made his way from Newport County, headed east, and got himself a pair of boots at that strange little stadium tucked just off the back of an industrial estate in Crawley. So whole host of things have been going on down at Crawley that have been raising eyebrows. They at the start of the season, absolute disaster videos where this strange guy dressed as a devil was shithousing any team that Crawley were playing in a way that, you know, I don't know, I just don't think went down particularly well with English football fans. The fact that the guy was speaking with an American accent didn't do him any favours. And then just before the FA Cup, they decided to give 3 of the sidemen an opportunity to join the squad, and their owners were coming out and spewing reasons as to why that was all right and that their fans should be very forgiving and such like. And then we had the small matter of a Carabao Cup pitch invasion where said Hunter Orrell was videoing himself on the pitch at a time where all the authorities were clamping down on fans entering the playing surface. So not the best things to be doing, but look, their season could be summarised a little bit like this, really. They're generating at the moment under a point per game played, and they're conceding nearly 2 goals a game. They're on their 3rd manager of the season. Highly rated Kevin Betsy came in at the start of the season, Arsenal Academy coach. It's not the first time that they've appointed a highly respected young coach. Dan McKitchie, you'll all remember, I think he was the England under-18 coach. But anyway, Kevin Betsy joined him. And he's got the push with a home record that read played 9, won 4, drew 1, lost 4. and they've not managed to find an away win all season. They've lost 5 and drew 5. They've had slight upturn in their form since mid-October. They've had back-to-back wins against Mansfield and Newport County, and they've managed draws against Bradford and Colchester United. So that's not too bad. It's even more respectable when you take a look and see that they picked up a win over Barrow, although they have bumped right back down to earth with defeat against Walsall. Although a Crawley fan told me today we stopped the rot because they managed to get themselves a draw against Gillingham. No disrespect there, getting a draw against Gillingham Town fans, is there? Nonetheless, that weird little run of results wasn't enough to save Ashley Young's brother, Lewis, from getting the chop. And this week, Lewis Young was sacked and replaced by former Tottenham winger Matt Etherington. And the chap that seems to have followed Matt Etherington around in his career, certainly when he made the move from Peterborough to Tottenham back in the day, a certain ex-Welsh international Simon Davis. So they're on their third manager already in 2022-23. And Etherington's come in somewhat concerningly for us, maybe, ahead of Saturday, promising dashing, attacking football. So, listen, I mean, like I said, I've got multiple tickets in the bag, and all of Shez Hannah's will be piling into a car and head down the N23 for this one on Saturday. What's the vibe, Chris? How are you feeling?
Well, it can't be any worse than last year, can it?
See, listen, I've got all right, Crawley. I've got to be honest, like generally, I mean, all right, I've got horrible Nathan Thompson getting himself a red card, but I've got positive memories of Mehdi Karouch and Karouch is on fire. I've got really positive memories of Anthony Grant absolutely steamrolling his way into the Crawley box as part of that 4-0 absolute thumping in the right. Glorious away day for Swindon, but it sounds like you might be a little glass half empty on this one, Chris.
Well, the other thing as well is though, I think it might be too soon for Johnny Williams. I don't think he'll be involved. It's just too soon. But Angus MacDonald and Tom Clayton have been back in training. Rashawn Hepburn Murphy's back. I think he might be a bit off, but I think there's a good chance MacDonald might be back. So we're starting to get everyone back. But the Crewe game, I thought that the midfield didn't work, so I would like to see that freshened up a bit. To be honest, I think it's the time for Lewis Reid to come back in.
Yeah, I'll make you right. Well, look, we'll come back to that. What Ellis? Are you making your way down to Crawley, or are you having to stay in Melksham?
Yeah, well, can't get there. No car, so yeah, I'll be staying in Melksham.
Well, I'm sorry, mate, but this is one round trip that I'm not prepared.
No, I don't blame you.
As much as I love you, champ, I cannot bring again.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, I'll be watching it from the comfort of my own home.
Very nice too, and very nice too. And how about you, Joe? What's your take? Are you feeling bullish?
I was literally just looking on Trainline for train tickets. I wasn't planning on going, but my missus is ill at the minute, and we were planning on going out on Saturday afternoon. So she's just told me that's off now. So yeah, well, something might happen. I might go. I'll have a look at it. If not, I'll definitely be watching at home.
Are you going to be Sir Big Joe from the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, Joe? You're going to start pulling in your media credentials, are you, and sitting up in the media box?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the old media pass out.
Yeah, good luck with that. So, how are you feeling? I mean, like they're a funny one, Crawley, aren't they? Because, like I said, if you go back through, if you look at their kind of recent results, they're like they're certainly capable of causing an upset. I mean, obviously we thumped Mansfield, granted, but yeah, Mansfield, and they've had a little bit of joy out of Bradford, and they've beaten Barrow. So they're not a team. We're not going to go to their patch and have an easy day, are we?
No, they're a bit of an unknown, really. You don't really know what you're going to get out of them. There could be. I think it probably comes to mind is that Gennaro Gattuso video of sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. And I think that's probably how you describe Crawley this year. I think, unfortunately, you probably describe Town like that as well a little bit at the minute. So I think if Town can go there and play well, we beat anyone in the league, regardless of who they are.
Yeah.
So you've got to focus on your own game, really, haven't you? If we go there and play how we know we can and to our best potential, we'll trounce them.
Now, so you're standing in the away end, and
Yeah.
I've no problem during the game, but I think it's the post and the pre-match I'm going to be talking about here is particularly telling. What sort of treatment are you going to be dishing out to Mr. Conroy?
I'd probably be booing every touch, if I'm being honest. I'd maybe when he comes out for the warm-up or after the game, give him a clap. But during that 90 minutes, it's basically it's war.
Yep, 90 minutes. I'll take that. What about you, Ellis? How would you be handling seeing Mr. Conroy in a Crawley shirt?
Not really bothered, to be honest.
That's the spirit.
I'm not even sure he'll play, actually. I think he's injured.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's injured.
He played this season.
We're speaking theoreticals, boys. We're speaking theoreticals. Chris, what about you, mate?
I would actually be very similar to what Big Joe says. You know, in the warm-up and whatnot, you know, he's a former player of ours and was part of a decent era, and he was part of the six. But during the 90 minutes against the game, is the enemy.
If for whatever reason, this would be my take, if for whatever reason he performs a miracle, makes his way back in the Crawley squad, which is not unheard of when new managers come to the fore, I would be saying something along the lines of, 90 minutes of war, but hey, let's not forget, we will always have a lifting of the trophy where he was indeed skipper, and I appreciate that's probably a little symbolic more than anything. But we will
it's more a case of he was one of the six who stuck around.
Yeah,
that's more important to me.
And let's not forget, Chris, we will always have Oldham.
Always. And the wonderful commentary of the superb Andrew Hawes.
Oh, what a moment! What a moment that was! Right up there with his best moments. Well, all right. So listen, I'll take a quick prediction from you. We won't linger, and hopefully, I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys down at Crawley as well. But Chris, let's have a score from you.
3-1.
3-1, and I'm taking that's 3-1 Town. Ellis, how about you, pal?
4-0 Town. I think we're going to absolutely steamroll them.
Okay, Joe.
I'll go 2-0 Town. I think it'll be quite comfortable.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I think they're going to make a little bit more of a fight of it. I've got a feeling it's going to be an edgy 2-1. 2-1 Town. And I've got a feeling a striker by the name of Jeff Cott is going to be the guy that gets our goals. He's due a couple, and I think he will be our shooter on the day. We tip our hat, ladies and gentlemen. I mentioned it earlier. Swindon Town women 0, Plymouth Argyle women 3. The game was preceded by a fantastic round of applause for Town's ex-goalkeeper, Carl Heaton, who at the age of 22, sadly, passed away this week. And I mean, it was really, really quite moving. There was a really, really pleasing crowd. Approximately, I think the official number was 475. So it was between sort of 475 and 500 people in the ground making up that applause, which I thought was really quite special. The amazing thing about that crowd was that obviously the double header at the county ground generated a crowd of about 750 people. So the thing that was really exciting about Sunday was that was a 500 walk-up crowd that was just pure Swindon Town Women's Football Club. So yeah, take our hats off. I mean, if ever you wanted an indication, as we said on the show at the weekend, that interest in our women's team is growing, well, a 500 crowd to the women's team meant the world when they, quote, before the game described their average attendance prior at Fairford as being a few parents, a dog and a duck. So amazing to see 500 people. And yeah, just listen, I mean, had it not been for an unlucky injury to Town's goalkeeper Emily McGrogan, as she came out to try and smother the chance that led to Plymouth scoring that opening goal, she rolled her knee on the turf and ended up playing on. obviously restricting her movement. That led to the Plymouth second goal. Emily, you could just see, was really struggling to get down to a shot low into the bottom corner. And also you had a defence in front of her that were clearly a little bit rattled by the fact that their goalkeeper had practically no movement. Of course, there was no goalkeeper on the bench to replace Emily. In the second half, at half-time, Steph Bent, Town's right back, Emily McGrogan goal. Steph, by her own admission, a goalkeeper she is not, but it was the best that the ladies' team could muster. And Argyle eventually fashioned an opportunity and just lashed the chance into the bottom left-hand corner that, by Steph's own admission, Emily would have probably saved. But hey, listen, it's one of those things. So I think if you factor out the injury to Emily McGrogan, I think the game would have probably been a lot closer. Guys, I don't know whether any of you to sort of, to develop on that, to develop that point.
Yeah, I think the game as a whole. I said this straight after the game. Plymouth deserved to win, sort of 1-0 at most. You touched on it, Hannah's two of the goals sort of just come from the injury. Obviously, second goal couldn't come off the line. But if she was fully fit, then she probably would have been able to make the ball and make the save. And obviously, third goal, of being in goal wasn't her natural position. So it was one of those days where, the bench, they didn't have a goalkeeper on the bench, and it just sort of messed them up a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, they had a goalkeeper in the, essentially available, but they were playing the under-18s and it would have been the under-18s keeper that would have stepped in for Emily. Bearing in mind, Emily herself is only 17 or just turned 18. But the under-18s goalkeeper was playing away in Plymouth. So there was no way that she would have got back in time for this game. I think the things that really sort of stuck out to us, we provided full commentary and analysis on the day, was that I think the Town's women more than held their own against the side that are a tier above them. It was pretty poor fare, to be honest with you. James Lally's women were, struggled to get their passing rhythm going. There were some nice flashes of play, but they certainly didn't get back to the kind of patterns of play that we saw in the 10-0 mauling of Porton Rovers at the county ground 6 or so weeks back. And I think what was quite reassuring was after the game, to an individual, they were all kind of kicking themselves that, they'd had a big opportunity in front of a big crowd at the county ground to put on a show, and then a combination of bad luck and a fairly dogged Plymouth Argyle team kind of prevented them from putting on the show that they would have liked. But we keep our fingers crossed and our eyes on the women's team moving forward. They are absolutely determined to put it right, and their games are coming up thick and fast. Obviously, they're still in the league, and they still got, I believe, they still got the plate that they're going after as well. They've got Cardiff's coming up soon, and Cardiff are unbeaten at the top of the league. It's going to be a huge game against Cardiff. There's only one team are going to get promoted out of Swindon's league this year. Cardiff are top at the moment, currently unbeaten. Town sitting in fifth, not far beyond them, certainly in a position to close that gap. So we tip our hats to Swindon Town Women's Football Club. It was brilliant that you had us as your media partners, and it will not be the last time either. Everyone seemed fairly happy with the level of coverage, and certainly from our point of view, brilliant fun, guys, wasn't it?
Hannah, just before you stop, have we got an update on the nature of the injury to Emily and how serious it might be?
No, we've not got an update, although it seemed to be on the day that she'd sprained her knee, and it was going to be scans and so on and such like. Emily was limping quite heavily. I believe she left the ground on crutches, so I don't think she's going to be kind of rushing back in. So
Bryony Hurd told us, didn't she, after the game that she was part of the medical team that looked at her leg at half time, and it was essentially fully blue. So she was actually advised to go to the hospital, but she decided against it and just said she'd come in for treatment the next day.
Yeah, she's a tough old girl, Emily. Tough old girl, but she's a huge, huge presence in that women's team. She's a massively popular character, and a real imposing figure at the back. I mean, she's not much shorter than me. I'm a 6-footer. She's not much shorter than me. Her distribution is absolutely critical to how the girls play. So I think, but nonetheless, one door closes and another one opens, and certainly the under-18s keeper, given that she's the only other goalkeeper on the women's team book, will have a big opportunity a little earlier in her football career to stake a claim. So we're gonna wish the best moving forward. But as I was saying, guys, I mean, Ellis and Joe, you both joined me in the commentary box and picked, and we had numerous conversations with everyone from the captain, Emily, Annie, Helena, Meg Attenborough in midfield. It was a good fun day, wasn't it? We're doing again, and certainly on a more regular basis as well.
100%, and it was a really enjoyable game as well. I actually enjoyed the football.
I'm glad you did, mate. I couldn't stand it.
To be honest,
it was very frustrating, Joe, wasn't it, to follow? Like I said earlier, I've got to be honest. I enjoyed the fact I was in the county ground. I enjoyed the fact I was watching a game of football on the pitch. We got a bit of skin in the game because we sponsor Annie and we sponsor Helena. So, you're kind of emotionally really invested in it as well. Obviously, it's always great to be back in the commentary box, having had such a big gap between pre-season when we did quite a few of the games and obviously this game. But one of those games where it's a little bit like, imagine watching the men's team and how frustrating it'd be when Louis Reed can't get his game going, or Saidid Khan can't get his game working in central defensive midfield, and the play just keeps on breaking down. You just can't quite find those link passes to your forward players, and that was the story of our day. We just kept on running down the same blind alleys and all resorting to sort of hopeful balls forward. And Plymouth, I thought, were very adept at mopping it all up. But I enjoyed the day. I mean, listen, like I said, I travel a long way, so I could. I don't know. It's a bit like saying you make friends in an insurance seminar. I always find a way to enjoy something about going to the county ground. So
it was a really good experience. And if I'm being honest, I've never watched the Swindon Town women's team before, so I wasn't really particularly sure what to expect, if I'm being honest. The standard of football was good. I think Plymouth were the better side, undoubtedly. I think I said it on commentary. We had the official Swindon Town captain, Rianne, who's obviously recovering from giving birth to her second child, so that's why she's out this season. But having her sat next to us and giving us the sort of the co-coms and the insight into the dressing room and what the girls are like, you could tell that she was so frustrated watching the game because she knew that they weren't anywhere near the levels that they should be reaching. And they were on a stage where it's a big day for the football club. They're at the county ground, and obviously they're there on their own merit. They're the fans are there to see them. They're not, as you say, they're not there for a double header. And you kind of feel like a few players froze in that situation. The passing, the midfield was breaking down every single time. There was a lack of cohesion or communication. The passing was off. I don't think Annie touched the ball maybe more than 10 times in the game, which kind of says it all. And we all know what a deadly finisher and how important she is to how Swindon play and succeed. It was poor. And Rianne obviously was really quite frustrated watching it as much as we are, probably more so, because she was disappointed that the girls couldn't quite put on the show that a lot of people had gone for. Having said that, I think my favourite part of the entire day was sitting in the Legends Lounge before the game and just looking around all the families that were in there. You see, mums, dads, daughters, sons. There were little girls aged 4 years old with Swindon shirts on, with their fruit shoot, and they're sat with their dad at the table, and both of them look like they're having a really a nice afternoon out together. And you can see that little kids were genuinely really excited for it and were getting into it. And to me, as I said earlier on, football's about family essentially, and the women's team is probably, I'd say, more accessible for young children at the minute. Obviously, we know what the town end's like, and I'm not too sure if I had a 5-year-old kid, I'd be particularly happy taking him to games at the minute with, fruity language, which I probably should apologise for. on my own, really. But stink bombs and just a bit of at times a sour experience.
Some of the ASB, Joe, you're right. Some of the ASB in the town end, as obviously the club have dealt with it. I think, to your point, the thing that excited me, you're right. There were two things that really caught my eye on Sunday. One was just to sort of back up your point about the next generation. I think at a time where the club's attracted a lot of heat for the way it's sort of kind of blanket treated the under-16 supporter bracket. I think it was great seeing our club putting its best foot forward and welcoming the new generation of supporters in. It really was heartwarming to see them all in the Legends Lounge, fathers with daughters. There are a lot of young girls coming along, which I thought was truly wonderful to see. So if it was your first time, or you brought your kids along for the first time, well done. Hopefully it won't be the last time. I think the other thing that I love to see, Joe, of course, was Tory Taylor coming off the bench and nearly bagging one from straight in the top corner from a fully 40 yards. And that's I mean, again, listen, going back to the goalkeeper, I think it's always difficult, if you haven't got a goalkeeper on the bench and you lose your keeper, there is a certain kind of sort of damage, if you will, to the kind of confidence and swagger a team plays with, because you're only one shot from any distance away from a goalkeeper effectively flapping one into the top corner, because that goalkeeper is, in the case on Saturday, ends up being a right back.
You very rarely see a team do well or win a game where they've got a player in goal that's not a goalkeeper.
Yeah,
I think back to, was it Harry Kane winning goal for Spurs against Maribor in the Europa League a few years ago? And the first thing he does is let a ball go through his legs from that free kick.
Yeah.
An absolute P-roller. You've got, I mean, to be fair, there are a couple of ones where players have got in goal when they're winning. I think John O'Shea did it against Spurs. Kyle Walker did it in the Champions League for City. But very, very rarely do you see a player go in goal and not make at least one mistake.
Mm. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, look, obviously I'm bound to say this because I'm an ex-goalkeeper, but if you like it, if your team is the balloon, then your goalkeeper tends to be the individual that kind of like that blows the confidence from into the balloon from the back, for want of a better analogy. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about Kovar in that god awful season, which we're not going to go back and sort of rehash, but there's a prime example of on paper a half decent team that are fundamentally hampered by problems between the sticks, and it really did seem to kind of have an impact on the women's team on Saturday. So listen, Plymouth half decent, they were probably worth the result in the end. 3-0 flattered them, and we give the girls the benefit of the doubt given the circumstances. But we will all hopefully be back at the county ground sooner rather than later. Talking to Rob Angus before the game, his interview is exclusively available still on our Twitter feed, so have a look through our feed and you will find the content from the weekend. But Rob's talking about double headers are very much part of the thinking moving forward, and there will be plenty of opportunity before the season to come and see the women for those of you that haven't. But listen, guys, I've not got a lot more to add tonight. We'll bring sort of things to a halt. Joe, you usually have a little something to sort of throw in there. Have you got anything else tonight, mate?
No, I think it's been a good one tonight. It's been boring without Swindon playing and having to watch England draw 0-0 to the USA over the last couple of days and weeks. Just looking forward to getting back into the swing of it, really, back into some League Two action. Yeah, I mean, obviously we had the women's team last week, and now we've got the men's team this week to look forward to. So happy days.
Roll on Saturday, Joe, and no excuses. You've got all the excuse you need, in fact, to make your way down the M23 or up the M23 in your case. So we'll be seeing you on Saturday. What about you, Ellis? Pal, or is that you done for the night?
Yeah, I'm currently laying in bed at the minute, but no, but I'm
curry sauce, as is the case.
Yes, yeah, but I'm looking forward to Saturday. A few goals from town and a nice win would be lovely.
All right, mate. Well, that'll do us nicely. Thank you for joining us, mate, and likewise, Joe. Chris, anything from you, mate, before we finish the night off?
I would love to go to the game on Saturday, but it's just too far, especially when I've got two cripples at home.
Oh, Chris, you massive plastic. Well, look, should you...
But Yeah, but I'd love to do it, and also I would need to go down on a train. But one train goes wrong, and we can't trust these trains now anyway, can we?
No, you certainly can't. Well, all being well, Chris, we might see you on Saturday. Well, listen, I say a collective merry Broadbent and a happy Tyler Smith day too. Fingers crossed that the festivities of this week will overlap onto Saturday, and we will all be enjoying ourselves a fine Swindon Town invasion of creepy crawly. But all that leads me to say is the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is an independent Swindon Town Twitter space. As such, the views do not represent those of Swindon Town Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. It's been our absolute pleasure to be murmuring in your ear for the last 2 and a bit hours. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. And if you listen to the recorded show, thank you very much for joining in. It's always good to have you along for the journey. A year is a long time in football. It's been a very, very short time, it feels, as we celebrate the first anniversary of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. To everyone that's been part of that journey this first year of our existence, thank you ever so much for all your kind words, all your support, and more importantly, tuning in. Can't do it all without you, and we very much appreciate you. So anyway, come on, you Reds. Look forward to seeing a few of you on Saturday.